Well, hey everyone. My name is Lynn Thibodeau Sear, and I will be presenting on a guide to an IEP. And as you can see with me, I have Stephanie Cart she is the parent liaison with Polk County. But Stephanie's not going to turn her computer on today as she's not feeling well. So she's muting herself so that we don't have to listen to her cough. Unfortunately, the flu is going around. But let me share my screen and we will get started right away. So do not scan this code, as I just found out it is not working. Um, anyway, so we're glad you're with us, and I am recording this, so please save your questions for the very end so that I don't have to get not disclosures, but agreements that you allow your voice to be recorded. So save it for the end when I stop the recording, please. As I said, my name is Lynn Thibodeau Sear. I am a parent training coordinator with Parent Education Network, which is a project under Family Network on Disabilities. And that I'll explain all of that in a second. But in order to work for Family Network on Disabilities, you have to have a family member who has a disability. So we don't just talk the talk, we have walked the walk. So in my situation, I have 4 adult children who all required an IEP. The oldest one had a short-term memory disability, and so he had a hard time remembering things. The second one is ADHD as well, ADHD and dyslexia. The third one, I have to try to remember all their diagnosis. The third one was gifted as well as ADHD. And the fourth one, I always like to say she was my reward for the hard work. The first 3 were, she was born with a genetic disorder, commonly known as Down syndrome. So it was nice to finally have one that, even with her cognitive disability, it was nice to have one that went a little bit slower than the others. So, oops, I skipped a slide. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, meaning we don't work for local, state, or federal agencies or any of the schools. We are funded in part by the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Health. And because we are funded through these grants, we are a free service to parents. So we help parents navigate the IEP. Stephanie also does the same thing as far as helping parents with their IEPs at IEP meetings for Polk County. She specifically works with the parents. We are here at FND, we are the statewide Parent Training Information Center, also known as what's called a PTI, something that was new to me until I came to work for these folks. And we are also the statewide Family to Family Health Information Center. Now, being family driven, what does that mean? We were founded in 1985 by parents of children with disabilities who came together for mutual support and sharing of information. Family Network on Disabilities is a national network for individuals of all ages who may be at risk, have a disability, or have special needs, and their families. We also serve professionals and concerned citizens. F&D is unique, and FND stands for Family Network on Disabilities. We are unique due to the majority of our board members, management staff, and all field staff have family members with a person that has a disability. So on this slide, this is our disclaimer. We're not attorneys, doctors, or mental health professionals. So all of the following information is not legal or medical advice. What we do is share information, resources, and supports for you and your family. Information is research-based and to create our trainings. And you'll see this in the following slides because I will be referring to different statute, etc. We encourage collaboration with schools and agencies rather than trying to be adversarial. So at the bottom of this slide, you can see our 3 different projects. Poppin serves North Florida, Parents Offering Parents Information Network. PSN stands for Parent Support Network, which oh my goodness, which supports, all I could think of was supplies, which supports families from Citrus County down to Lee and Collier County. Parent Education Network supports Lake Orange, Polk, which we are presenting to today, and Orange, and then basically goes down the eastern seaboard of Florida. Family Star is our project that is funded by the Department of Health and is the Family to Family project. So IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's a law ensuring services to children with disabilities throughout the nation. IDEA governs how states and public agencies provide early intervention, special education, and related services to eligible infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. Infants and toddlers with disabilities, which is birth to 3, and their families receive early intervention services under IDEA Part C. Children and youth ages 3 to 21 receive special education and related services under IDEA Part B. So how does this slide connect to the IEP? The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, short for, also known as IDEA, is the nation's federal special education law that ensures public schools serve the educational needs of students with disabilities. IDEA requires that schools provide special education services to eligible students as outlined in a student's individualized education program, or IEP. While each state differs in how they develop an IEP, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires that every IEP include the following. Number 1, how the student is currently performing in school. Number 2, how the student can achieve educational goals in the coming year. And number 3, how the student will participate in the general educational curriculum. So these are the 6 principles of IDEA, and we're going to define each of them a little bit. So the top one is FAPE, free and appropriate public education. This is the special education and related services that are provided by public expense, meet standards, and are appropriate and provide in conformity with an IEP, and that's in section 1401-9. The IEP, the Individualized Educational Plan. Once a child meets the criteria under IDEA for special education services, the IEP team begins developing the IEP document, Parent and student participation. It is required and expected that parents and children play a role in the development and implementation of the IEP. Appropriate evaluation. So to determine whether a child is a child with a disability, as defined in section 1414, within 60 days of receiving parental consent for the evaluation, or if the state establishes a time frame within which the evaluation must be conducted, the states can always do more than what is federally mandated, but they can never do less. So yes, within that time, within such time frame, and to determine the educational needs of the child. So most school districts have 30 days from the time you ask them in writing for an evaluation to respond to you and schedule an appointment for you to come in and sign the consent. So that's a 30-day window. Then they have 60 days to complete that evaluation. Once the evaluation is completed, they have another 30 days to schedule the eligibility meeting to see if the child qualifies. So you're looking at about 120 days, almost half a school year. Another pillar is least restrictive environment, and LRE is short for that. So according to IDEA section 1412, schools are required to educate children with disabilities with children who are not disabled, quote, to the maximum extent possible, end quote. So that's very loosely defined. And then the last pillar is last principle is procedural safeguards. These are a set of regulated guidelines designed to protect the rights of parents and their child with a disability, and at the same time give families and school systems several mechanisms by which to resolve their disputes. The procedural safeguards are disseminated annually. So what's an IEP? An IEP, as the slide states, is a written statement for each child with a disability that is developed, reviewed, and revised in accordance with Section 614-D. So this document lays out the plan of action that will be used to ensure your child is provided a quality education. This also means having equal access to programs with his or her peers, assistance with completing tasks and goals, or whatever service or technology your child needs in order to maximize his or her potential in achieving academic success. The IEP document is developed jointly by a team that consists of parents, educators, and specialists. So this quote is directly from the definitions section of IDEA 2004. Notice that the law requires that the program be in a written format, and it also makes reference to Section 614-D of the Act. So why is Section 614-D important to know about? Because IDEA is a procedural law, it lays out 8 specific topic areas that must be discussed, agreed upon, and documented. And we'll be discussing these areas in this workshop. So who attends the IEP meeting? The parents are one. It is expected that the parents attend all IEP meetings, although parents must be invited by the school. If they choose not to attend, the meeting may be held without them. However, all efforts should be made by the school to provide parents the opportunity to attend the meeting, whether it's by conference call, meeting at alternate times, or Zoom is a great platform to be using these days. Some schools prefer Teams, regardless, as long as it's a platform. The student, parents may bring their child at any age. Here in Florida, we do require them to be invited at age 12, but you can bring them even younger to the IEP meeting, so long as they feel it's appropriate. For transition IEP meetings, the child must be invited. And that, like I said, that starts at age 12. The exceptional student education teacher, the ESE teacher, the regular education teacher, especially if the student is in any kind of inclusive setting. Local Educational Agency, or LEA for short, is a school system representative. This individual represents the school district and is authorized to make decisions on approving services. So sometimes it's the principal, sometimes it's someone else that they may have attending that meeting who can basically make those decisions for them. Also an interpreter for the evaluations, someone who can interpret whatever evaluations are being used at that time. So this could be a psychiatrist, this could be a psychologist, it could be the therapist, etc. Language interpreter if needed. So if English is your second language, you can request a professional interpreter. And then anyone working with the child that can provide information on their respective areas of expertise, such as therapists, service providers, transition specialists, or agency representatives. Also, parents are allowed to bring anyone they invite to the meeting. So I always encourage parents to bring someone else, someone who, may not be a parent. Certainly the dad, you want to bring the dad if they're available, but an outside person never hurts, just because they're not the parent. And so they're listening as an outsider and not the parent at this meeting. In 2004, a change in educational thinking brought us response to intervention, also known as RTI, which is a framework that many schools use to help students who are struggling with academics. Language related to RTI was written into law with the 2004 reauthorization of IDEA. So RTI, response to intervention, is a 3-tiered educational approach aimed at early identification and support of students whose learning needs are not being met. The data collected during tiers 1, 2, and 3 are included and used to make the eligibility decision. Interventions are matched to student need, monitoring progress frequently to make decisions about changes in instruction and goals. The umbrella of the multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, is more comprehensive. It may include the 3 levels of RTI, but MTSS goes beyond just academics. It also covers social and emotional support. That means it can include behavior intervention plans. MTSS covers the adults at the school too. It includes things like professional development and focuses on creating ways for them to team up to help struggling students. So everyone starts at the bottom of the triangle, the academics and or behavior. And so you can see all of the different things involved here. So let's say this is the general education classroom and the teacher is presenting whatever the lesson plan is for that day. And she may have out of, 20 students, she may have 5 that are still struggling with that particular subject. So she may take those 5 and give them a little bit more support after she has introduced this lesson plan to give them a little bit more one-on-one attention. And so of those 5, maybe 1 is still struggling with the concept. And that's where we're going to move them to level 3, which will give them even more one-on-one attention. And at that point, if they are at level 3, time and time again, that's the time for them to be able to be referred for an evaluation. Parents, you don't have to wait for that. They can be doing this at the same time as you have requested an evaluation. So pre-referral, okay, there are different pre-referral interventions through which to initiate the IEP process. These interventions are implemented based on the type of disability exhibited by the student. The pre-referral process helps to determine whether behavioral and educational challenges exhibited by the child can be resolved in a general education classroom. To avoid unnecessary evaluations and placements, the assessments used at this stage are purely intervention-based. Typically crafted in the general education class, this step is conducted with the use of direct performance procedures, helping to save money, time, and other resources in the process. During the pre-referral stage, teachers will try various certified teaching approaches in hopes of establishing whether flawed instruction could be the cause of the problems exhibited. Children whose learning remains challenged will be referred to the next step in the IEP process, referred for special education services. So the main objectives of the pre-referral are document and elaborate the challenges and difficulties exhibited by the child, evaluate the usefulness of classroom accommodations and changes, review the power of different instructional interventions, and supervise the development of the student. So that would be like your tier 2. Your tier 3, okay, step 2 of the referral. If the pre-referral interventions prove unsuccessful, the student is referred for special education services through the use of a referral. Referrals can come from parents, daycare professionals, public health nurse, doctors, or social service agencies. Referral for special education services can happen at different stages during a child's life and vary a great deal based on their individual needs. Often, poor academic performance, continued misbehavior, or disruption of their learning environment are prerequisites at this stage. So it's not just academics. Step 3 is identification. Once a referral has been made, a special assessment is carried out to determine whether the child has a disability that requires special education services. During this stage of the IEP process, the child's major life activities, such as interpersonal relationships, performance in school and at home, are used to assess the kind of services required. Multidisciplinary teams become involved to help determine the child's distinctive strengths and needs. This team includes parents and other family members, educational diagnostician, school psychologist, or a teacher, depending on the state where it is conducted. An array of data types, assessment instruments, and methods are used during this stage in order to create an accurate report later used to determine the correct path for the student. If the final decision is that the child has a disability that requires special education, a baseline of performance is determined. Step 4 is the eligibility. The information gathered during the assessment stage is used to categorize those who have a disability and are eligible for special education services. The IEP committee creates different elements of services required to plan and deliver an appropriate education framework. Students who do not meet the qualifications for special education services remain in the traditional classroom setting. Step number 5, development of the IEP. The next step in the process is to create the actual IEP. An IEP team is formed, which includes the child's parents, educators, administrators, and other specialists. As a parent attending an IEP meeting for the first time, it may be an overwhelming experience. To help calm your nerves and know your child is receiving the help they deserve, you have the right to bring a child advocate with you to the meeting. Child advocates are paid professionals familiar with these proceedings and work specifically for the child and the parents. During the meeting, resources required by the child are identified, their individualized learning style determined, along with goals, both long-term and short-term. Step number 6 is implementation. At this stage, the student's IEP and associated services commence. Accommodations are provided for both instruction and testing, along with a range of multidisciplinary services required from different providers to support the child's educational program. The providers your child with special needs will interact with moving forward could include occupational or physical therapists, speech pathologists, and other special education professionals. Step number 7, evaluation and reviews. Each IEP developed requires accountability and consistent follow-up by the child's parents. A review is conducted annually or after every 3 years, depending on the state. Here in Florida, it's annually. The purpose of these reviews is to determine whether the child is meeting their educational goals. If the goals are not being met, revisions are made in the IEP. In the event that the child is meeting and even exceeding their IEP goals, new milestones are determined. In some cases, the child may be moved back into a traditional classroom setting. So these are all the pieces. The top 8 parts of an IEP are: number 1, present levels of performance describing a child's current skill level. Every IEP must include a description of the child's skills in all areas of concern and explain how the disability affects their progress in the general education curriculum. IEP teams typically use formal assessments to determine the child's functioning and establish a baseline of performance. The team may also use anecdotal information and progress data from the child's classroom teacher to further describe the child's skills. Everything is very data-driven, if you will. Measurements of measurable annual goals. The IEP must contain goals and an explanation of how progress toward goals and objectives will be measured. It must also describe how that information will be reported to the parents. Number 3, explanation how a child's progress will be tracked. The IEP must contain an explanation of how progress towards goals and objectives will be measured and describe how that information will be reported to parents. This gives parents a clear idea of how their child's advancements will be evaluated. Number 4, special education services a child will receive. The IEP must include a description of the student's special education program, specially designed instruction, and related services the child will receive to help him meet his educational goals. The length of time and location where he will receive these services must also be described. Number 5 is how children will participate in the general education classroom. To ensure that children are educated in the least restrictive environment to the greatest extent possible, the IEP team must consider if and how the child will participate in the general education program with children in mainstream classrooms. The IEP must specify the amount of time a child will participate in mainstream education programs and explain the rationale for that decision. Number 6, accommodations and modifications. The IEP must explain what types of accommodations and modifications will be used with the student and why they are necessary. This includes test adaptations. Number 7, the amount and duration of services children will receive. The IEP must include a projected beginning and end date of services, the frequency of the services, and where they will be delivered. The length of time and the location where he will receive services must also be described. Number 8, a statement of transition. No later than a child's 16th birthday. That's federal guidelines. An IEP must include measurable goals for the student's anticipated post-secondary program and a description of the services needed for the child to reach those goals. We start that process at age 12 here in Florida. So during the evaluation step of the exceptional student education process, assessments were done to give data to the team to determine the child's present levels of academic achievement and developmental needs. So these are the 5 domains. IDEA requires a statement of present level of academic achievement and functional performance to be developed and documented during the IEP process using the results of the assessment given during the evaluation and additional input from the team. The statement, the required quote-unquote statement is actually a series of statements, and these statements should be related to different areas called domains. There are 5 domains in the IEP: curriculum and learning, independent functioning, social and emotional, communication, and healthcare. Curriculum and learning, your child's current abilities on an academic level, how your child interprets information, and their preferred learning style would be identified here. Social and emotional, how well does your child socialize with their peers? How is their behavior generally? Under the social emotional domain, any effects of the child's disability that result in behaviors that impede the child's ability to learn need to be clearly defined in the present level statement. Independent functional skills. Is your child able to complete tasks independently, like homework, assignments, chores, dressing, eating? Under the health domain, this is typically when we're teaching a child about their health. So if your child is diagnosed with, let's say, diabetes, do they know how to check their blood sugar? And we want to make sure that that's a goal there. Communication, how are your child's receptive and expressive language skills? How well does your child understand language? Can he or she follow 1 or 2 verbal commands? Are they able to express needs or thoughts, needs or communicate thoughts effectively? What is their preferred method of communication? So typically under communication, you have a language goal, which is different than a speech goal. Speech is actual articulation and formation of the mouth, the tongue placement, etc. Whereas communication could be using a device. It could be using sign language, lots of different things there. It is very important to document the connection between the child's disability and their behavior by clearly stating that connection in the present level section of the IEP. Documentation exists that may be critical during a manifestation determination should one ever occur. It's also important to know that not all of the domains will always be used on an IEP. Only the domains relative to your child's disability and educational needs will be addressed and outlined on the IEP. List your child's strengths and areas of concern in each domain. Now that you know that the domains needed for your child's IEP, you can develop your own present levels of performance based on observations at home and your child's academic history. Detail all the things your child can do what he or she is really good at and the areas that he or she truly struggle with. So under each domain, be sure to list your concerns. If you have concerns that you feel are a matter of priority, be sure to write them down and discuss with the IEP team. Copies of the documents, you want to make sure that your input is attached to the IEP, as most sections that document parent concerns are usually too small to capture every detail. Document the family's input in advance and share it with the rest of the team. School personnel see only what your child is doing and can do at school, which may be very different from what they are doing at home. The parent's input is crucial to developing an accurate statement. And then the other thing is, just because your child is doing really well with academics doesn't mean they don't need an IEP, maybe due to behaviors like social and emotional or even independent functioning. So we want to talk about SMART goals. IEP goals are written in the individualized educational program or plan and describe what the child will do, how they will do it, and by what date. Typically, this is a 1-year plan. IEP teams many times use SMART goals as a way of evaluating and creating the blueprint to be followed. SMART stands for S, specific, M, measurable, A, attainable, R, realistic, and T, timely. So be specific and write clearly defined IEP goals and objectives for what should happen. Measurable is established concrete criteria that can be measured, such as read 20 sight words by December 31st. Attainable, each goal should be able to be reached. Realistic, the goal may be attainable, but is it realistic? If it isn't realistic, it will never be attainable. And then timely, what is the time frame for reaching the goal? Will the goal be reached by the end of the semester or the end of the school year? In addition to formal meetings, you should also be in constant communication with your child's special education teacher about your child's progress. He or she should be monitoring your child's progress on academic and other goals and be prepared to present you with updates regularly. The instruments and methods used to measure progress must also document how often the results or data will be reported and how it will be communicated. For instance, is it going to be a meeting? Is it going to be a phone call, an email, documentation via backpack? I don't recommend that, but certainly there are different ways. Also, keep in mind the IEP is a legal document that must be implemented with fidelity. You have the right to request evidence of implementation. The IEP is reviewed frequently for progress and must be reviewed at least once a year to determine if the program is meeting your child's needs. After the initial IEP meeting, you will meet with your child's IEP team on an annual basis to review your child's progress and modify the plan as needed. You can also request an IEP meeting at any time throughout the school year if you feel there is an issue that must be resolved by the IEP team. You will attend an IEP meeting every year until he or she graduates or stops receiving special education. It is imperative that you attend all of these meetings. So a description of services must reflect each of the areas in which the student was determined to be eligible. Areas of eligibility include reading, decoding, math, behavior, listening comprehension, reading fluency, reading comprehension, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, language, articulation, etc. Each area listed under description of services should be linked to a goal which reflects a need identified through the evaluation. Those needs represent each skill area that is affected by the disability. Statements such as study hall and social studies are not skill areas affected by the disability and should not be used as a description of services. For younger students determined eligible under the category of developmental delay, the areas affected by the disability would include cognitive, adaptive, social behavior, fine motor, gross motor, articulation, and/or language. If cognitive is too general of a term, hang on one second. I need to just kind of move this. No, it's not going to move. If cognitive is too general of a term, then consider using terms such as pre-reading or literacy, pre-math, etc. Location of service. The team must decide where, which is the location, the student's specialized instruction can best be provided. Specialized instruction can be provided in one or a combination of settings or locations, such as general education classroom, resource room, self-contained classroom, therapy room, library, study hall, etc. There's also center schools, which is a school for only disabled students with disabilities. There's also hospital homebound as in residential placement. When determining the location of service, the team, which includes parents, must take into account the least restrictive environment. The total amount of time the student is removed from his or her peers results in where the student is on the continuum of alternative placement. So it starts at the general education level and then moves into more restricted. So it might be a resource room, and then it might be self-contained. Every effort should be made to try each option on the continuum, moving from least restrictive to most restrictive. Some students with disabilities need accommodations or modifications to their educational program in order to participate in the general curriculum and to be successful in school. While the Individuals with Disabilities Act and its regulations do not define accommodations or modifications, there is some agreement as to what they mean. An accommodation is used in this document, allows a student to complete the same assignment or test as other students, but with a change in the timing, formatting, setting, scheduling, response, and/or presentation. This accommodation does not alter in any significant way what the test or assignment measures. Examples of accommodations include a student who is blind taking a Braille version of a test, or a student taking a test alone in a quiet room. A modification can be as used in this document as an adjustment to an assignment or a test that changes the standard or what the test or assignment is supposed to measure. Examples of possible modifications include a student completing work on part of a standard or a student completing an alternate assignment that is more easily achievable than the standard assignment. Needed modifications and accommodations should be written into a student's IEP or Section 504 plan. These changes should be chosen to fit the student's individual needs. It's important to include the student, if appropriate, when discussing needed accommodations and modifications. Asking the student what would be helpful is a good first step. The IEP must be detailed for every service delivered to your child. It must be easy for anyone to read and understand. It must contain the who, what, when, where, why, and how each service provided to your child. So the service is the therapy or instruction. The person responsible is the who. The where is the location. The when is the date and time. The date it starts, the date it ends, the amount of minutes, how many, and then how often. Special factors, there's a wide range of special factors. Therefore, there are many different types of related services. Related services might meet a student's school transportation requirements or help with his or her social emotional needs. As with special education, related services are not meant to be a one-size-fits-all solution, nor are they disability specific. In addition to the contents we just reviewed, these areas must be considered by every IEP team. The IEP must include a description of the student's special education program and related services the child will receive to help him meet his educational goals. The length of time and the location where he will receive the services must also be described. The IDEA lists 5 special factors that the IEP team must consider in the development, review and revision of each child IEP. These are IDEA's exact words. The discussion below will highlight the importance of these special factors in the education of children with disabilities and the need for individualized consideration of these factors in the IEP development and revision. The special factors are behavior, English language learner, blind or visually impaired, communication needs, deaf or hard of hearing, and assistive technology. We'll now touch on transition briefly. Florida chose to start transition planning at age 12. When students are 12, their IEP meetings will focus on what services they will receive in place by the time they reach 14. They must also be invited and included to their IEP meeting. So some of the things that we want to make sure is, does a student have an interest inventory? Has that been conducted yet? The IEP at age 12 will include the course of study. Actually, at age 14, I apologize, will include the course of study, provide the sheet explaining the diploma options. And this is a statement of whether the student is pursuing a standard diploma or a certificate of completion. Desired post-school outcome is a statement of the student's desired post-school outcome. And this isn't set in stone. This can change. The age of majority, so that they understand. It's a statement that must be sent to parents advising them that when their child reaches age 18, which is the age of majority, their child may make decisions for themselves and parents are no longer to be invited to attend IEP meetings. Self-determination is consideration of instruction or the provision of information in the area of self-determination. So it's a process, right? Understanding, research and learn about the IEP process. The more you understand about the IEP process and IDEA, the more instrumental you will be as a meaningful participant at the IEP meeting. Ask questions. Parents are strongly encouraged to ask questions, including those that they identified while they were preparing for the meeting. I always encourage parents to have a list of concerns, written down before they go in the meeting. Planning. Careful planning of strategies that can and will be used in the classroom and at home is key. Collaborating with the teachers and staff at school will help this process be more and successful in developing an effective IEP. If disagreement occurs, agreed upon portions of the IEP can be implemented and areas of disagreement can be revisited at a subsequent meeting. And I always encourage parents, ask for a facilitated IEP meeting on those areas that you don't agree on so that you can have that third party kind of facilitate, a meeting that will be able to be agreeable for everyone before you start going through your procedural safeguards. Seek solutions. The best results for the child are achieved when the team works collaboratively. Write. Taking your own notes at the IEP meeting helps you retain anything discussed. And this is where that third person who's not a parent can, help you as far as writing notes down. If you need a recording in order to fully understand and participate in the process, you can request to record, but should make that the request to the participants in advance. So as an example, my husband's not going to be able to be there and he will need the tape to participate in decision making. It has to be you do have to ask for that in advance for school. Some school districts have a policy where they do not allow it. So you need to know what their policy is. Monitoring. You want to keep track, evaluate, and record any progress in your child's activities or behavior at home. This information should be shared regularly with his or her teacher and the IEP team. Teachers will also be documenting your child's progress, and any data and information will be reported to you. You and the IEP team decide what the reporting system looks like. How often will you receive progress reports on whether or not strategies in place are working? Would you like to receive reports quarterly? Would you like to receive them with the report cards? Or if you're starting a new program or strategy, maybe you want to know how effective it is and receive a report within 4 weeks of implementation. These things are discussed at the IEP meeting. So here's some tips to succeed. Build relationships regardless of your past experiences with other teachers, schools, or the system in general. These are the people who care and teach your child. Build a relationship with them, and that's the IEP team, the faculty, PTA, etc. Establish a routine for communicating and sharing information. Try to be more involved in all school processes. This means joining the PTA. And I find parents with students, with disabilities are limited on time. So maybe instead of PTA, you do the SAC, which is the School Advisory Committee. They only meet once a month and they don't have projects typically like PTAs do. Asking your child's teacher how you can help. This could be anything from volunteering in field trips to donating or buying school supplies to starting a classroom phone tree, networking with other parents about school events. This is key for your child's success. The IEP meeting depends on and complements his or her educational experience. You want to attend all the meetings. Parents need to be invited to attend the IEP meeting. However, if attempts to invite the parent have been made and documented, the school district staff can hold the IEP meeting and make decisions without the parent present. Signature. Basically, that just equals attendance. While it is critical to have a parent's input, your presence at your child's IEP meeting does not mean that an IEP meeting does not occur. It is also important to know that your signature at an IEP meeting only confirms your attendance. It says nothing about your opinion of the IEP. Your signature on the IEP document does not mean you agree or disagree with its contents. And then you want to organize your records. Keep a file or folder or binder with all of your child's updated information. For instance, a tab for evaluations, a tab for an IEP, a tab for the behavioral intervention plan, or what is commonly known as BIP, a tab for the FBA, the functional behavioral assessment, etc. File older files in a drawer or a box at home, since that will be part of your child's history, but not the current files. So you may want to have, a 3-ring notebook for the history, but a 1-inch notebook for the year. Oftentimes, parents come to meetings thinking they're fully prepared with files of information. However, most of their information is outdated. For example, there is no need to review evaluations or IEPs done 3 years ago. Whoops. So finally, what to bring to an IEP? Bring your IEP binder, bring a notepad and pen to take notes, and no, it doesn't hurt to bring cookies, but certainly not mandatory. Bring your partner, an advocate, or a friend to take notes and support you. Make sure the IEP team knows in advance that you're bringing that person. You can bring an audio recorder or smartphone recording app if you'll be recording the meeting, but you need to check with your state regarding the laws and policies about recording meetings. Each school district has a different policy. Bring the current draft IEP and make sure you ask for the draft ahead of time so you can review it in the comfort of your own home and make whatever notes you have or questions. The list of questions that you want to address. You want to bring an IEP goal progress tracker, progress reports, and report cards. Again, you might want to tab in your IEP binder for that. Work samples that illustrate progress or concerns. So the IEP team may say, that your child has mastered a specific skill. Ask to see the work samples. Notes about strategies that do or do not seem to be working at home. So for instance, as an example, I used to say, okay, if I have to count backwards from 5, my daughter knew that it was super serious. And I did not do that every single day. It was one of those, we got to go and we got to go now for whatever reason. I'm going to say, it's an emergency that they're clearing out a building and she's like, I'm not leaving. No, as soon as I start saying 5, 4, she knows that I'm not playing. And you bring proposed accommodations and suggested SMART goals. Okay, it may be, for instance, noise canceling headphones so that they can focus a little bit better. Bring any private evaluations you want to share. The school is not obligated to implement any of those evaluations. They are only required to quote unquote consider that information, and that's written in IDEA. Evaluation reports from your child's most recent school evaluation. Make sure you have a school contact sheet to update with new provider information in your IEP binder. So the other thing is parent school communication log or other notes about phone calls, meetings, or emails to and from school, and a letter of parent concerns to attach to the IEP, listing your child's strengths, areas that are challenging, how your child is doing in and feeling about school, and other things you'd like noted. Possibly bring a folder to keep documents received during the meeting. Be sure to request a copy of any documents you sign during the meeting. Bring yourself a bottle of water. Nerves and talking can make your mouth dry. You want to bring very much a collaborative mindset. And then sometimes tissues. IEP meetings can be emotional sometimes, but not for you because you already know what's going to happen. So hopefully you can share that one special story that will touch everyone's hearts, and they'll be passing the tears around for happy tears. So I used to like to share what, my daughter was doing, maybe in whether it was at church or at her horse therapy, that just really was awesome. I don't have an evaluation today. These are my final slides. I've already talked about the 4 divisions that are in the middle here. On the right-hand side, the purple one is FND, Special Needs Trust Services. Our founders' children grew up and became adults, and when they turned 18 and applied for SSI, Social Supplemental Income, one of the thresholds is that you cannot have more than $2,000 in the bank. So they establish what's called special needs trusts. And basically, the money that is put in there, it cannot be counted against them as an asset for government programs. So it's not a matter of if we die, it's when we die as parents. And so we want our kids who are now adults to be taken care of, and that money can be used for things like maybe dental expenses that are not covered by, Medicaid, or, horse therapy, that type of thing. There's a variety of adult services that are necessary that are not covered by governmental benefits. The circle on the right that is teal colored is called Dadvocates, and that's a support group specifically for dads. Dads just, think differently than moms do, and so we have that support group. This slide is a slide you want to take a picture of. These are our downloadable resources. We have one-pagers. We have healthcare resources. We also have social stories already created for you if you want to use that. The sound bank is really great because let's say your child has an aversion to sirens or maybe fire alarms, thunder. We have these sound banks available for you to help your child adjust to those sounds, because we can't get rid of those sounds, right? And so what we want to do is help desensitize them in the comfort of their homes in listening to those sounds so that they become more comfortable. On the right-hand side, we have what's called F&D University, and as it states, it is a non-accredited online system specially designed to help parents and professionals learn more about special education at their own pace. And it's in both English and Spanish. And then finally, my last slide is basically our contact information. This is our website. So if you need help and want one-on-one help with your IEP, you're welcome to send us your information or give our office a call after asking for your name, your contact information, like your phone number and your email. The next question will be, what county do you live in? And so depending on the county that you live in will depend on who they assign your case to. So that concludes our presentation for today. I'm going to stop sharing. And it's been it was about 45 minutes, but this was an overview. Okay. So it's not specific to any one area of the IEP, but as the title says, it's basically a guide to an IEP so that you understand what the document is and how it works and how it applies to your child. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email is Lynn, Lynn, at fndfl.org. And I'll be happy to try to work with you. And we'll go from there. And if you want any kind of presentations to your group when you see this, again, feel free to reach out to me and we will make that happen. Stephanie, thank you for joining us. I know that you're not feeling well. I appreciate it. If you want to talk, I see that you did unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I was just saying thank you. That was very informative.
Awesome. And I will send you the link to the recording since we're now recording these.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.